Good day, Adam.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. It's a morning.
It's a morning, yeah. Sure enough. So let's start with the topic then. Today we're going to discuss a very basic thing to game design that's taught here at Uppsala University, which is MDA.
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge and to my, experience with MDA, it's quite easy to understand, but it's rather hard to understand why it works in many cases. And you understand it at one point, but you don't really understand why you understand it, which in some cases creates some confusion.
Yeah.
So Adam is here today to maybe clarify a few things for you. And in the future, hopefully he'll be back to talk about something else. But let's just jump into it. So how was it that you came to work in the game industry, and how did you end up here on an island in the Baltic Ocean?
I always say it's been a terrible mistake. When I was young, home computers turned up, like proper rubber-keyed Spectrum things. And so my first game I ever played was a text adventure, and it was brilliant. Just the sense of puzzle and narrative, and probably at 14, 15, like, this is what I want to do. Didn't discover role-playing really until university, maybe. So my initial thing with games was always still rubber-keyed Spectrum, but was never a programmer. Even at that point, was absolutely a designer. Run through a degree in computer science and information technology and systems analysis, came out the other end and vowed I would never, ever work with computers. This is a terrible, terrible idea. And then spent a year working, demonstrating toys and writing plays and writing role-playing games, paper-based role-playing games. And then I saw an ad for someone that would pay for me to do what I was already doing for free for my mates. Well, this seems like a thing I should do.
Maybe I can make money doing what I like.
And so that was me joining the industry for the first time.
Yeah.
So that was me joining the industry, and that was 20 years ago. No, more now. That was the beginning of my 20 years in the industry.
Yeah.
I did a bunch of stuff, worked a bunch of places, but the games industry is incredibly volatile. So I'd worked with people who hadn't released a game in 20 years. By the time I'd got to my end period in the industry, I'd done a bit of mentoring work with someone who used to work at the university. I was fed up with traditional games. He needed someone to help him run his course. So I jumped on as an external teacher for what used to be our fourth year, and also a number of years ago. So I did that for a bit, and then the last subject responsible was leaving, and everyone said, you should go do that job. And I applied and got it, and then everyone that told me to do it said, why did you apply for that? That's such hard work. What were you thinking? And this is my 9th year.
Yeah.
And so none of this was... Now, at no point did I say, I'm going to join the games industry.
Yeah.
And at no point did I say, I should be a teacher.
Life just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
So to say.
Yeah.
So, you're from the UK.
Yes.
Specifically London?
Just outside London enough to be London.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if you look at how the English and UK market reflects maybe on maybe say the Nordic and maybe the Americas as well, what's the biggest I'd say difference between them? Do all people play role-playing games?
No. I was absolutely the geek set. I like to think I was one of the first cool geeks, but I've seen photos back then. No, it's very... And I mean, then it's very much a geek set.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think everyone plays role-playing games now, but everyone plays.
Yeah.
We all have phones. I've met people that don't. I've met people on courses whose last game they played was Adventure on an Atari 2600. And they just do not play anything. I don't understand how they survive.
Yeah.
But in terms of then, definitely not. I'm going to answer a question that may not need answering. In terms of market, though, England really makes games for the English, which is also Championship Manager, tops the chart every year, but doesn't sell outside the country.
No.
And you look at places in the Nordic regions, and they sell to export.
Yeah.
And that mindset is completely different to back home, which is I always find fascinating.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when I went into the game industry, and I went in as a marketing intern on a company called Tune, which basically does back-end marketing or marketing analysis. And one of the first things my boss said to me was, if you look at the Nordic region, compare that to the rest of the world, the Nordic region exports that much, if not more, in just games, and has about as many studios as there are in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because there's so many just popping up all the time.
Yeah.
And my job was hunt them all down. Here's our product. Do you want it? So that's I think it's very important if you want to understand game design to begin with, to understand that it's a market.
Yes.
And you can have your flower power dream about creating the best game in the world, but you're still going to have to use marketing analysis to be able to create something.
Absolutely. The day that they let me pay for my rent and food with art will be the day I stop teaching.
Amen to that. Okay, but so when we think of game design, one of the first things that might pop into your head is MDA, at least if you've studied here on the island. MDA might be easy to explain. It's just mechanics that goes into dynamics and then that goes into aesthetics. But to understand it, there seems to be some disconnect, at least to why it works the way it does. Most students just generally get the hang of it in the second year. So my question would be, how would you explain why MDA works, and why do you think some people might have a hard time grasping just that reason?
So, to do this backwards. So I had no idea about MDA until I came here.
Yeah.
I just built games where if a player does this, they should feel awesome.
Yeah.
And they'll feel awesome because of these things. And that was something I'd learned over 20 odd years being in the industry. So I came here and saw the MDA lecture and went, I can teach it in half an hour. So I think the reason it was originally taught in the second year, but I feel it's such a powerful tool, we should use that as a foundation. And so I dragged it down into the first. Why do I think it's so hard to grasp? I think it's because, as with all design, you only understand things when you use them. And I could teach you architecture and how to draw blueprints, but until you actually draw one, you're not going to understand the things being told. And I also think that, and I saw this recently, I saw an article written by someone on MDA. The language that we use to describe MDA is the language in the paper. And the paper's years old now. And it's written academically.
Yeah.
The language I use to describe dynamics is the worst word salad I have ever seen in my life. And so when we teach it, no one ever goes away and says, man, we should probably put this into, understandable and then teach them. And so I teach it, and I've been teaching it for a bunch of years because being able to look at my work for 20 years through that lens made sense. But when you teach that to students, they don't have that.
Yeah. Specifically in the first year when everyone's new to, academic writing, and you go like, well, this paper is subpar.
Yeah. It's And everyone has their own definition of it. Yeah. So M is a mechanic, not G for a game. So each mechanic has a feeling attached to it, and your game is a combination of those feelings. And that's an impossible thing to explain. Even now, you say to people, so if your mechanic is moving, how does your player feel when they move? And it's just that look of, oh, but my game's about this. Okay, but how does that... Yeah. I think... So I went through this, and it was about 3 or 4 years before I went, man, this language is awful.
Yeah.
I need to change the language because this doesn't make sense to anyone. And then it was a few years back, and I saw an example on a paper on MDA O, and the writer added the O. I should find her name because it's important. Where is her name?
And just to clarify, no, we're not speaking of the drug MDA.
No,
we're speaking about the design.
The design tool, yes. Sometimes
I wish it was different.
Definitely not here. Heather Browning wrote a paper about MDAO, what she used for medical behavior change. And she described MDA in terms of basketball.
Okay.
And the basketball definition made everything clearer to me. So every time I now teach MDA, I put this in there. So a mechanic is a rule. So all players on a team win is a rule from basketball.
Yeah.
Rules shape behaviors, and they don't just shape behaviors on their own. The rules, the world that you put those rules in, the feedback that you give the players for those rules shape their behavior. And that's your dynamic. So you can change your feedback and it will change the behavior. And so within basketball, cooperation within a team becomes a dynamic or a behavior, because if you cooperate within your team, you have more chance of winning. And if your team wins, everyone on the team wins. So that supports itself.
Yeah.
Because of that, camaraderie, a feeling of friendship between your team members, is an aesthetic that grows from the dynamic cooperation within a team. And camaraderie is a fellowship aesthetic because it's all about being social and social play. And so those things connect up. And I think that the other reason I think that one points to is camaraderie being a fellowship type of fun. The types of fun that they describe are just buckets.
Yeah.
And you can put anything that sort of fits in that bucket in there. So I think the other reason that this becomes really difficult to understand is you say to someone, here is a type of fun, it's exploration.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, okay, well, if I'm an explorer, that'll be this. But exploration can be working out rule set, working out gravity, how deep does your crafting system go? What do I need to put things together? As much as it's what's over the next hill, how do I climb that hill to find out?
As in the sense of like MDA might be hard to understand because of the wording and the expression used. I think that, and I'm segueing a bit, but types of fun also has that kind of a problem because it's very general language to make a lot of people understand.
Yeah.
Whilst it's not diving into the more complex aspects of the theory.
Yeah. But then that's why I teach that early.
Yeah.
Because even if you get a basic grip of it in the first 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Every time you build something, what rules are my mechanic setting? How do I make sure the player follows those rules? What type of fun do I have? And every game, every assignment we tell you use MDA, and you struggle through as you do. But by the time you get to the end, that then becomes a situated knowledge and understanding that you've done because you've used it so often.
Yeah, I mean, when I usually just sit around in my underwear playing games at home, the best or the most brilliant ideas come to me because I look at the game I understand why everything flows as it does, because I can reverse engineer it to some point because of MDA.
And then for me as a designer, oh my God, it's that old. That you walk around. So I always talk about supermarkets in terms of levels, but supermarket queuing.
Yeah.
The MDA of the supermarket queue is so broken. And you look at the quick self-checkout things as solving the what is my aesthetic for queuing to shopping boredom.
Yeah.
And that's great. Then I also have people that will never use them because that also puts cashiers out of a job.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Old people that don't necessarily use credit cards, so on and so on. I was actually on the boat yesterday, and I was thinking about how can we redesign refrigerators?
Yes.
Because I was like, refrigerators are stupid. They're a heating cabinet that are made to chill food so that we can preserve it longer. And I literally started writing like a design concept just to maybe sell it to a company one day.
Oh.
But let's continue.
Yes.
I am quite cynical, and I tend to question a lot of things. At this point, by force of habit, when I started out, I promised I was a small baby with big dreams and glimpses in my eyes.
He taught you well.
Yeah. So, what do you think the conversation about MDA in the sense that it might not be useful or it might not be good is held on a face-to-face basis when people talk outside of the classroom to each other, but it's never really addressed at a lecture level?
So this is a massive answer, and I'm going to keep an eye on the time, because I know I like talking. I think there's two ways of looking at it. When I taught MDA, and now when I teach MDA, I think it's the second thing that I teach. I teach analysis and then synthesis with MDA. As much as I like to keep an open class, the second week in, everyone's feeling each other's teeth. No one really knows what's going on. No one's going to say, I don't understand this in a classroom. And even when someone, as I do you understand this? And I know you never ask, do you understand? You always ask what is confusing. But that never comes out my mouth because I remember that after I left the classroom. And so no one asks about that. And so they'll ask each other. And of course, confusion then reigns. Yeah. And also, looking at the way that we teach and the amount that we teach a lot really quickly. And while I say that this is foundational, I can always go back and say, look, this is part of MDA. This is how you do this. If you've not grasped, if you do not have a fundamental grasp of MDA, and then someone says, and supermarkets are built that way, that just confuses the matter even more. So in that way, I think that no one will ask. And when you and like I said earlier, whenever you look online, look at any papers, anything like that, it's always just reprinting the original paper. And that just horrifies me because it either means no one else actually understands it and they just reprint the paper, or we all only write academically, and by doing that we have to print the stuff that we found because we reference it, and so it's never put into better speak, as I like to say. So on that one, I think there's that. There is the no one wants to look dumb. Yeah. Which is miserable because, as I cynically say, and it comes out my mouth cynically and it's horrible, I'm here not to just hear myself speak. I'm here to make sure everyone understands something. And I'm going to get paid either way. Yeah. But if you don't understand, it's my job to help you do that.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, that one. But I think on the other one, MDA, I heard someone speak this summer that they hate MDA. They feel MDA is a properly limiting methodology because it only helps you think in those terms. And my designer brain heard that and was about to argue and then went, no, okay, I understand why that makes sense. By the time whenever we talk about the education externally or what games do, games communicate through systems. And at some point, one hopes that we graduate from what is this mechanic, how does this mechanic affect this behavior, what is the type of fun from that, to I need a system that makes my players feel this, how do I express that? And so at some point, I think we should find a way of transitioning that way. But MDA, I'm going to use the horrible word game studies. MDA works very well like that. I can look at a game and say, these are the building blocks of that game, therefore I can build it.
Yeah.
And I've been taken recently to describing MDA as Duplo and systems design as Lego. But that feels really mean because there's nothing Duplo about MDA.
No.
It's
less. I mean, I can see the similarity, but I'd say that MDA is more of it's a simple system that uses complex thinking.
Yes.
So, chess, for example, simple to play, very complex to understand the deeper strategies and why you actually think a few steps ahead.
And I'm not even going to think about the MDA of chess. I mean, because you have a mechanic of move.
Yeah.
The dynamic being whatever the board is, and so your aesthetic of maybe pre-move becomes challenge and planning and all of that. But then if I describe chess in terms of you move and you plan, that doesn't even cover how that works. But no, even now though, I mean, I talk about, I think with systems, even now, if I think about games, I build with MDA in mind instantly. But coming back to answer the question, we've always said this: if you don't understand something, come ask.
Yeah.
This as an idea is brilliant because this has saved people asking. So I'm going to do it again. Mechanics are rules. The feedback in the world you put in sets behaviors for your players, and that's your dynamics. And through the repeating of those behaviors, they feel a type of fun, which is your aesthetic at the end. But come and ask, because it, as in chess, you move and you take pieces, doesn't really cover the depth of how MDA works.
I think another thing might also be that the classes are huge in the first year. I mean, what are we, 120 like median?
Yeah.
And so that, as you said earlier, no one's going to say, I don't understand something.
No.
But if you look towards the design project, self-promoting, you actually, what were we, 15 people or something, which meant that maybe a 3-hour lecture became a 6-hour lecture with a discussion, because we had that platform to actually discuss and generalize about certain areas of what we didn't understand.
Yeah, and I can do Game of Games for people that aren't in design. It's a random selection of genre, 3 mechanics and 3 aesthetics, and then design a game with those things. We can do that with a class of 25 people. With a class of 125, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, continuing on.
Yes.
Everyone has their own idea of how you can improve something, or how you can... or why some things might not need improving.
Yes.
So if you could change or rearrange anything in MDA theory and in the concept, would you? And if so, what? And if not, why not?
Yes. No. absolutely, that's a terrible idea. Is the things, all of them.
Yeah.
I don't teach MDA anymore. I teach MAD. I think understanding what rules are and then understanding what types of fun are and then looking at how you bridge that gap is an absolutely better way of teaching it. We need to understand dynamic better and we need to be able to explain it better. I think that because everything comes from that part, the dynamic is the gameplay and all of that entails. And then all of that includes the graphics, the setting, where you're playing it. All those types of things matter. And we need to be better at that. But then that always knocks on from we need to have a better grasp of the design language that is game design.
Yeah.
And I think that we are woefully bad at that. I think that we need to look at how we teach in general so that we can teach things like that.
Yeah.
Because we have to have you using it as soon as you're taught it.
Yeah.
And Sissy Fight, the card game, the card game that's about group combat, which is all we're going to say about it, is a great way of teaching that because the mechanics there are absolutely reinforced through behavior types, which gives you types of fun.
Yeah.
But then once you've played a few rounds of Sissy Fight and someone says, go and redesign it and change a rule, or go and redesign it and change an aesthetic or a setting, you just make Sissy Fight.
Yeah.
Because it's such a strong imprinted game. I don't know if I would change the underlying method, because it's clear that this method was built by looking at a number of games.
Yeah.
And it works that way. And every time you look at other people that try and change it, I've seen one which is designed to be iterative, DMS maybe. It's another 3-letter thing, which is exactly the same as MDA, but with 3 different letters and a slightly tweaked nuance. And it's the same thing as looking at new design. If you can package it differently, you can make money by writing books. But at its core, MDA is a really nice, robust method. I just think we should understand as an industry and as an academic what a dynamic is, and then find better ways of explaining it. And it would be the way that I would change it.
I think I'd probably just, as you said, rearrange the letters, but I'd also use some mathematical symbols to just have M plus A equals D.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's simple enough to, say, oh, well, people won't understand that. They'll think that there's some formula to it, which there is to some extent.
Yes.
And I think that might be something that escapes people sometimes, that you actually have to understand that the relationship between M and A equals D, because you can't have either without.
Yep. I just saw that thing about people not understanding and formulas. I just saw an exhibition about architecture. And one of the first things they say is, what informs the form? So what are we doing with this building? Where is it set? Who's going to use it? What's the price thing? All of those things will determine the form of the building that we make.
Yeah.
And as much as I am a flowery artist, that thing applies to games. We're not slapping paint on a thing intuitively. There is that sense of intention. And while no one wants to look at things being formulaic, there has to be in the mind of the designer that sense of, I am building something for someone. Why would they care?
Yeah.
Why is this interesting to them? And I think that, yes, understanding that formula, understanding that what we do isn't magic, it's science with a magic-y end,
Yeah.
I think is a thing that would be useful.
I think I had a thought and it was so good, but I lost it. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
Come back to me. So as an industry alumni, how did the work that you actually did during your time reflect on the theories that you use today and teach today? You answered this a tad bit earlier, but just to run through it again.
So there is a thing, unless you've come through an education, you go into the industry, there are no theories. You reinvent the wheel every single time you design a game. And good designers, he says in scare quotes, look at what makes games work, they cut them open and steal their power, as Warren Ellis would say. So there's an understanding that this mechanic works in this game because of these things. It won't necessarily work in this game because these things aren't there. The one I always talk about is Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go works because it's Pokemon, not because it's an AR game where you catch monsters.
Exactly.
And so the rush of awful AR games that have come after it.
Walking Dead.
Oh my God, The Walking Dead. What were they thinking? That, I think, is that type of thing. Everyone invents the wheel.
Yes.
But design is a craft or it's a situated knowledge, because we argue about craft and theory at the university all the time. So it's a situated knowledge. I understand through doing, and I can learn and express different theories once I reflect on what I have done. And so because I was there for a number of years, all of that comes into my teaching. I can look at MDA and say, this is why MDA works.
Yeah.
I can look at our funnels and point to them in specific games. And then choosing what I teach has affected that. So looking at the final year course on entrepreneurship came about because there are very few new game industry jobs when everyone graduates.
Yeah.
If we can get designers thinking in terms of startup, there will be work and money for them. And so how you teach entrepreneurial thinking through games, why an R funnel is useful, why building a game for an audience is absolutely vital. Understanding that audience, all of those things shape what I teach and then where I teach them.
Yeah.
And every year, there is is this relevant to the students when they come in next year? What needs to change?
Yeah.
And if it needs to change for the first years, where can I slip that into the second and third year's education so everyone has that same knowledge?
Yeah.
And so I think I want a better industry in terms of working practice and intention and understanding. In the same way, we would never make, we just saw The Help. As part of the game design minor, we did The Help because we were going to object-orient analyze The Help. And The Help is a heartwarming story of black maids in the South. And I watched this movie, and this movie is profoundly problematic. And so I come into class and I say, this is a profoundly problematic movie. And they all go, what do you mean? We don't understand. And they start analyzing it. And at the end of the lesson, they're like, this film is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, this is a terrible movie. We don't have the language for saying this is a terrible game, not because of mechanics, but because of what it is saying.
Yeah.
And I think I want a better industry so that we understand what we make and why we make it and what we say and how we're saying it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's become cyclical.
Yeah.
What I learned goes into everything that I teach and how I teach it, but at the same time, I want what comes out of that to make a better industry, so that when I look at industry news, I can say, oh, I can teach this now because that's what they do, as opposed to I should teach this now because that's not what they do.
Yeah. So,
yes.
Finishing question.
Yes.
When you talk to industry people today, those theories that are taught here at campus, or generally when you're traveling around, become the subject of discussion often. And if not, why does it not? But if it does, when it does, how does it compare to when you were working?
So this is an interesting one. We only talk to industry people now, unless they're mates, at conferences. And at conferences, people will be talking about a thing.
Yes.
And so while theory will be mentioned, and you will ask questions, and generally, if you'll know anyone that's come from our education, because they will be asking all the awkward questions.
Yeah.
But you can have conversations there, but it's very generalized theory.
Yeah.
Again, it's we have names for things that people do instinctively. When I talk to friends, they're, depending on where they are in the food chain, I think there's an appreciation of we need to make things for audiences if there's a lack of understanding on how. But when I was first starting in the industry, I mean, the industry wasn't new. I think we were into PC games then, but PlayStation 2. I left the industry. No, let me rephrase that. I went into early mobile phone games when the PS2 launched. So I had a period of time on early PC, PS1 games. And we would discuss game mechanics and why those mechanics would work and how we'd make the challenges for the player interesting with those mechanics. And I feel that we had more in-depth design questions there than I'm seeing in output of games now.
Yeah.
But then there has been no method of keeping that knowledge. So I was designing, one of my first games I designed that of course never got made because they never do, was a story-driven game with this person in a coma, and it was a point-and-click adventure, and they were in a coma, but they were on a boat, and the boat was sinking, and that was their internal situation. So every time they did something, so when they fired a flare, that was effectively letting people know outside that they weren't dead. Every time we got bright flashes of light, that would be someone putting a light in your eyeball. So we had this metaphorical, here they are fighting their own demons, trying to keep this boat afloat so that they can live. And so we would have conversations that were, everything that we do must be in service of the story. Every item that we pick must have a metaphorical link to either mental health or actual health or the situation that put them there or the demons that they have. Everything must mean a thing. And so we went through this all the time, but that was never written down for anyone else to read. And so we look at BioShock Infinite, where killing is bad, okay, but let's put you in an arena where you have to kill people so we can tell you at the end, killing is bad. So did no one think? And then, we go to conferences, but the same people are picked to speak in conferences, and they say the same thing. So I saw one of my last game developers conferences in San Francisco, standing room only keynote speak. Someone was talking about narrative games, and it was a big industry name. And they came out and they were stumbling their way through a state machine. If you do lots of work for the elves, maybe you can unlock elf missions. But if you do work for the orcs, those elf missions will disappear. And maybe you can start, unlock missions if you're doing for both of them. So you can have double cross. And they said, I don't know if this will work. Maybe this is an idea. I'm just an ideas person. And I'm sitting in the audience. I'm standing, because it was standing room only, watching people take these notes down as if it was manna from heaven. Yeah. And I'm like, how do you not know this is a state machine? What is wrong with people? We have no way of storing knowledge. We have no way of communicating that knowledge. And I think that if you are a lone designer in a company, having those conversations and those ideas, then you do think you're the only person that does. I was stunned to know that we could teach MDA. That was 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears. If someone told me this 15 years ago, my games would have been entirely different.
Yeah. I think maybe a small, or at least from an outsider's point of view, I think a small problem might be that the hierarchical structure within companies, and I say big companies here, is a bit too challenging to have the coffee room discussion.
Yeah.
And necessarily not that people think differently, it's just that they don't really see it fit or think it the time or place to have that conversation, which is why I love hierarchies in some senses and I fucking hate them in others.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to be able to have a conversation like this.
Yes.
At the same time that I think that some decisions are stupid as
oh my god, yes,
bloody hell, but I can't really do anything about it because there's a structure that I have to go through, which has proven to work in some cases.
And I think the other thing with that is not everybody on the team wants to be especially in the industry, wants to be a designer. Yeah. Sometimes they just want to make that sequel.
Exactly.
I used to do things with my design. We had this superhero game that we designed. Again, never got made. Beautiful superhero game. The main story was either you're a villain or a hero. You play in certain ways, but my main storyline was Ragnarok. I didn't tell anyone it was Ragnarok, because if I walk into a design meeting and say, and this is a game about the coming of giants and the end of the world and the eternal winter, they'll all go, you're not making that a superhero game.
Yeah.
And then I went through and went, I want to put major art scenes in this game as being a tarot read. So if you read these things and see those symbols and you play through the game, there is a second narrative thread through tarot imagery. And then I want to go back and do it with runic imagery as well.
Yeah.
But you would never tell.
No.
You would never tell your team you were doing that.
No.
Because that would not be happening.
Absolutely not.
And so even then, as a designer wanting to do something more, that never happens. And so I don't know. I have no idea how that works. I'm hoping that the type of education we do here leads to teams that want to work together, that leads to teams that want to go together, that want to do work that is different, that is still a core market, an expanded market, a mass market, but is saying something in a different way or targeting an audience that hasn't been seen before. And we get that happening.
Which is generally why I work alone, because a lot of people here want to make games and want to make fun games, which is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But like I think my point why making this is important is that there's this whole subcategory that you only learn about when you're in it. So any niche market, but people fail to realize that it's a market because students don't have money, or we know we're friends, we shouldn't pay you, or stuff like that. But it's been great talking to you.
Yes. I don't know how much MDA we did.
We did. I mean, I probably did a lot because we have about 52 minutes.
Okay.
So
that's all right then. Yes.
I'm grateful for you coming.
Man, this has been brilliant. We should do this a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll just convince Uppsala University to buy it, and then I'll be able to work with it, and I'll say, fuck you, game industry, I'll work with this instead.
Or we should get a Patreon and then just do it as a
absolutely
podcast. Yeah,
do it
this
weekly.
Fun.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll
See
talk
you later. Yeah.